Welcome to the Million Pound Mission Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Shively, the PhD, the previously heavy dude, and I'm on a 1 million pound mission. Now, I've personally lost over 100 pounds, and I've applied what I've learned from my own transformation journey to help my hometown clients lose over 35,000 pounds in just 5 years. Now I'm on a mission to produce over 1 million pounds of results by delivering my best weekly tips, motivation, inspirational stories, and transformation strategies so that you can gain clarity about what you need to do to reach your goals and give you the confidence to take action. And the perfect time to start taking action is right now. So let's do this. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Million Pound Mission Podcast. It's your buddy, Adam. How's it going out there? Hopefully you've kicked off your new year in style with a lot of fire and intensity and digging into those goals. This is episode 75, How to Burn Fat Faster with Mr. Rob Dionne. I'm psyched to get into this one, but first I got to do a couple of quick shout-outs. Shout-out number one is my iTunes review of the week. And this week it's coming from Dr. Shayla. And here is what Dr. Shayla has to say. This podcast hits close to home. Needing to lose 100 pounds myself, I find the advice inspirational and actionable. I also appreciate Adam's willingness to try out new formats for his show. So, Dr. Shayla, thank you so much for taking the time to leave an iTunes review. That is so helpful for me to get feedback from the audience and also help spread the word about the show. You guys out there, if you want to support the show, be sure to leave an iTunes review. You can become podcast famous just like Dr. Shayla. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Now, the second shout out is our sponsor for this week. Our sponsor this week is tryabouttime.com. Now, I've been talking about their protein powder a lot, but I've been recently trying their new amino hydrate branch chain amino acid product. I've been using that during my workouts. I love it. It's very easy to digest. It tastes good. And I've had some of my trainers and members try it out, and they like it as well. So go to tryaboutttime.com. Be sure to use the promo code Transformation Coach at checkout. That's Transformation Coach, all one word. And you're going to save 25% at tryaboutttime.com. All right, let's dig into this episode. You are going to love this one. It's always nice when I find another kindred spirit. I seem to find a lot of those with my interviews, and I just feel so lucky to be connected with people like my guest today, Rob Dionne. And just a quick bio on Rob. He's the owner of Open Sky Fitness, and this is where he's been helping people for the last decade to lose weight, build muscle, and correct some major health issues by guiding them to realize their full potential. And Rob and his wife, Devin, also co-host the Open Sky Fitness podcast, which I want everyone to subscribe to and check out. This is where they deliver a weekly dose of amazing fitness inspiration through special guest interviews and topical teaching episodes. It's a really, really good show. It's one of my favorites to listen to. So make sure that you guys check out the Open Sky Fitness podcast as well. And today in our interview, I gave Rob a simple mission. I said, I want to talk about your story because he's got a great story as well. And I love interviewing people that have kind of their own number one client. They started on themselves, and then they go out and start to help other people, because I resonate that, because that's what my story looks like. And so I really resonate with Rob's story quite a bit. And I asked him, let's talk about your story, but let's deliver some top fat burning tips, because, it's a new year, people are motivated, and let's really give them the good stuff. So we dive into his top fat burning tips. And without further ado, let's do this, my friend. Here's episode number 75, How to Burn Fat Faster with Mr. Rob Dionne. All right, my friends, welcome to another episode of the Million Pound Mission Podcast. I'm psyched. I have brought somebody on the show today that you are going to absolutely love, and he's bringing his top fat loss tips to just inspire you. This is the time of year when we need that extra little bit of motivation as we battle through the holidays into the new year and building momentum into the new year, depending on when you're listening to this. But
Rob Dionne is here, and he is going to rock the house. I was actually introduced to his material a few weeks ago by my podcast host, Justin. Shout out to Justin. And he's like, you got to listen to this guy's stuff. You need to have him on the show. And whatever Justin says, I do. But I've been listening to Rob and his wife, Devin, and their podcast, the Open Sky Fitness Podcast, for the last few weeks. And I love it. And the thing I love about Rob's show is that this is the first time I'm talking to him here, but I feel like I know him. And I love it when podcasts are like that and very relatable, just a great conversation every show. And there are takeaways galore. Like I listened to an episode recently with Dan John, and I was like, oh, complex training. That's a nugget that I have been using in a while. Just spark something. I can plug that in. So, Rob, welcome to the Million Pound Mission podcast.
Adam, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
Yes,
so excited to be here.
Yes, the energy combo between us is going to be off the charts. So, fair warning, everybody.
Yeah.
So Rob, I wanted to, I obviously have been researching you. I've been going through all your stuff and loving it, but a lot of my audience, they may not know your story. And I know that as a leader in the fitness industry, we all have those stories of how we got inspired to do what we do. So what's that story look like for you?
Yeah, it's interesting because fitness wasn't necessarily a part of my life until I was right around 30 years old. I was an athletic guy. I grew up as a kid. I grew up as an athlete. But when I was in my 20s, I think like most people, you're just focusing on your career. You're focusing on maybe your relationships or your family, and you're putting your health and your wellness on the back burner. And I did exactly that. And my wife and I got married when I was 30. This was back in 2008. And she, or maybe I was 29. Jesus, time just flies by. Wow, I just turned 40. But so we got married, and we were on our honeymoon in Hawaii. And I was standing by this beautiful, picturesque waterfall. We were on that road to Hana. I don't know if anybody knows that in Maui. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. And I'm standing at this waterfall, and she's like, "Hey, Rob," and she takes this picture of me. And as I kind of like pan around to look at her, and when we developed the picture, I realized like I was not ready for this picture, and I was totally scared to see what this was going to look like, because I usually, when somebody snaps a picture of me, would hold in my gut, if you can relate. And I was just totally just hanging out there, and I was 30 pounds heavier than I'd ever been in my life, and I knew that I was. I just didn't know what it looked like. I didn't want to know what it looked like. So when I developed that picture and I saw it, I was mortified. And that's when I realized, oh my God, I really have to start making some serious changes in my life. And 30 pounds is not a big deal. It's not that, like, there's guys and women out there that are listening going, come on, man, you're 30 pounds. But for somebody, it all kind of accumulated in the last couple of years where I was just gaining probably 5 or 10 pounds every year. And it was going in that direction. And I knew that I was on a really bad trajectory, and I needed to pull it back and rein it in. And at the same time, in this time frame in my life, I just started becoming a personal trainer. And it was a weird kind of, I don't know. It was like I felt like a hypocrite, but at the same time, I was trying to help people, and I was learning a lot of stuff about health and wellness. So it was a real eye opener for me that I really needed to start changing what I was doing, and that's kind of like what's triggered this whole process. And now that's been now 10 years roughly since then, and I've learned a lot along the way on how to basically get my health and wellness under control, and also help other people do the same thing.
The weird thing is, like, there's so many parallels between our story. Like, I got married in 2008 as well. I weighed 327 pounds. I'd actually started losing weight for the wedding, so I was under 300 pounds at that point. But very strange, very strange. But I think that people like you and I that have been there, our clients can relate to us almost a little bit more than the person that's been fit their entire life. So I think that's a huge advantage for people like ourselves, where we can say, yeah, I know what it's like to be 100 pounds overweight or 30 pounds overweight and want to get rid of that and go through the process. So I say, hats off to people like us that are in the trenches and can really relate to the clients. So yeah, I feel where you're coming from on that.
I think there's a lot of guys out there and women who, even if you're not obese or you're not that far overweight, there's still a struggle. One of the things I really struggle with in my personal life is with food and everything around health. I do struggle, but but the thing is that I think the difference between me and most people is that I've done a lot of the works, psychologically. I go to a therapist. You hear me talk about this on my show. I highly recommend people going to see therapists and talk to therapists about what's happening with them. And I broke down and I really figured out like what I was doing and why I was doing it. And I grew up in a family, 4 older sisters. My mom was always on a diet. My dad had health conditions his whole entire, like basically from the 1995 until today. Like my dad has had in 95 had his first heart attack, then had lung cancer, then had strokes, then had another heart attack, then had another stroke. It's been nonstop for my dad. And luckily he's still around, but he's not getting around all that well anymore. And this scared the bejesus out of me. And also watching my mom sitting across, feeding my dad the same foods that my dad would normally eat. And I'm not blaming my mom in a sense, but my mom would be on a diet, eating chicken and broccoli, while we're all eating spaghetti and meatballs. And I just, in my mind, the way that I interpreted that was, you only have to eat chicken and broccoli if there's something wrong with you. If you need to change something about like the way that you look, then you eat chicken and broccoli, then you eat healthy food. Or you could basically do low calorie or starve yourself, or you go through all these different diet programs that are like bananas and, the cayenne pepper diet, like all these cleanses. Yep. All of that crap is something to distract us from just being healthy. And so for me, making sense of all that as a kid growing up, so I'm a guy, I would say I'm like kind of like a guy's guy, but at the same time, I have a very strong read on the kind of the feminine side of all of this, because of listening to my sisters look at themselves in the mirror and go, "Oh, that's disgusting. I got to lose weight." Or my mom going, "I just have to, I have to lose 10 more pounds." And then she would lose the weight, and then she would just start eating the same way and gain it right back, and then start complaining about it. And so I felt like that was a way the way I needed to be thinking about being healthy. So when I turned 30 and I started trying to lose weight, and it was not as easy as I thought, all of those, it's so weird, man, but all of those mental synaptic flows, the way that I processed myself not being happy with myself, was the same way my sisters and my mom would do it. And it was like, but that took years for me to figure that out. It wasn't like immediately. I was like, wow, I got a problem here. But this is, I think, the kind of mental game that a lot of people don't dive into. I love I was on your website looking at how you approach being healthy, and then there's the fitness, the nutrition, and the strategic thinking. And that comes with really figuring out what's your hole, right? You have that video, it's awesome. What's your hole? And then how do you bridge that? How do you basically bridge that or fix that or patch that in order to basically keep you on the right path without falling into those same traps? And those traps, the way that I interpret it, is your own mind, the way that you think, the way that you sabotage yourself. We just did, I don't know if you listened to that episode recently, my wife and I, Devin and I did an episode about self-sabotage. And for us, it was kind of like an eye-opening study, because we spend about 5 hours every week studying for our show and figuring out exactly what we want to say in every episode and breaking it down. And we did one specifically about self-sabotage. And I suffer from something called the imposter syndrome, where I don't feel like I'm good enough most of the time. And I know that I am deep down, like logically. We know this is about ourselves, but at the same time, it's like this internal struggle. And I know that it comes from being a kid, interpreting the way that my parents or my mom would do things, and then taking that all on myself as if there was something wrong with me. So I don't know. That was a really long-winded talk about basically why I'm so messed up in the way that I approach my life. But if anybody wants to listen to that one, it was like two or I think it's episode like 172 for self-sabotage and like imposter syndrome. It's amazing. It's going to blow your mind to hear. It's going to be as if you struggle with succeeding, whether it be your health or your business or your family life or whatever it is. check out that podcast episode, and you'll hear almost every single thing that you're like, that's me. Oh shit, that's me. Oh no, that's me.
Yep.
And that was a big episode for us.
I'll put a link in the blog and in the show notes on that one, Rob. So that
Awesome.
we'll make sure that everybody gets connected on that.
Awesome. Thanks.
No, I think what you just said, that, as fitness professionals, people like you and I have to be able to bridge that gap of being relatable to the people out there, so they don't put you on that pedestal of, oh, they never cheat on their diet. Oh, they can go and work out 12 times a week and they never get injured and things like that. They tend to put us up there. So just being real, that's what I love about your show, is that you talk about the things that you struggle with, but we can all learn from that. That's the cool thing, is you're kind of blazing a trail, and you come back and say, okay, well, here's what I messed up. Here's what I did wrong. Here's what I learned. Now you guys don't have to make that mistake anymore, and we can shorten the learning curve for everybody. So yeah, it's all good, man.
Yeah. I'll tell you a quick story. I was interviewing a woman on my show. I'm not going to tell you her name, but my community knows who I'm talking about because I made kind of a big deal of it at the time. She's very well known in the fitness world, very, very successful. And I asked her the question, basically, what's it like when you fall off? Like, what happens when you derail? We all derail. What happens when you derail, and how do you get back on? She's like, well, I don't really derail. Like, I kind of, maybe I don't work out one day, but then the next day I double up, or the next day I'm right back in. And I'm just like, okay, well, do you ever struggle? Like, do you ever get home from work and you're like, oh, I just need a glass of wine. I need to smoke a bowl, whatever it is that's your thing. And, like, what do you do? And then do you feel guilty about that? And she's like, no, not really. I don't really care about that stuff. And I'm like, I can't relate to you. I said, listen, the reason I'm asking you these questions, and I said this right on the show. I go, the reason I'm asking you this question is because I want people to understand that you're not a machine, that you struggle just like the rest of us. But she doesn't, or she's not admitting she does. And that was really hard for me to talk to her, because I can't relate to that. I can't relate to somebody who just pretends like they got it all figured out. And maybe there are some people like that just don't struggle with, there are people like that who don't struggle with their weight. Their bodies stay phenomenally in shape without hardly ever working out. And there are a lot of personal trainers that do that. I don't think they're that helpful for the average person who really does struggle, because they can't be empathetic. They can't be sympathetic. Well, maybe they can be sympathetic, but they can't really be empathetic because they don't know what it feels like. They don't know what the struggle is. They don't know what it means to sit down, because when we're recording this, it's the 2 days after Halloween, and I'm having conversations with people in my community about how they're so upset with themselves for having sat down and just eaten like 6 pieces of candy, and that they're shaming themselves. And having that conversation with going, you can't shame yourself. Like, I understand you wanting to, but think about this. You're not helping yourself. You're not serving yourself. You need to talk to yourself in a kind, nurturing way, the way that a parent would talk to you. And that's one of the reasons why I don't talk to myself that way, or I struggle with it, because my parents didn't talk to me that way. It was, and I think that maybe that's the root, right, for me, of why I'm so punishing on myself. But everybody has to figure out what their thing is. So where that kind of started for them. So when I'm having this conversation about eating too much candy in my community, I'm coming from a place of, I understand. I really do. I know that's a struggle, but I know from personal experience, it doesn't serve me. It doesn't help me. And if you can just forgive yourself and say, I'm starting now again, because the only moment we have is now, in this present moment, right? The past keeps us the past. There's this great saying, if you live in the past, you're living in depression. If you live in the future, you're living in anxiety. The only time to be happy is now. So if you have that, if you can just right now be okay with yourself, then you're going to be fine. It's just being okay with yourself in the moment. That's the struggle for a lot of people. I feel like I'm going on crazy tangents here, Adam.
I love it, Rob. You just keep going, man. That's why I had you on the show. I say one thing and I turn you loose, brother. That's what we're doing.
This is basically, you're getting my show in a nutshell, where Devin and I are discussing. We're both health professionals, right, in the world, but we struggle with things just like everybody else. But we're not afraid to talk about the fact that we're not perfect, and that's basically our entire show. How we struggle with all of it. But we research it and we try to improve it, and that's life, right? Life is just improving one little bit at a time. So, yeah.
Now, so I've got another. I know the people are like, bring on the fat loss tips, but I want one. I want to set the table a little bit because something that I am finding a lot of clients are dealing with, the podcasting thing is really taking off. Like, I'm getting my clients listening to lots of podcasts, but you probably know where I'm going with this. There's so much information being shared out there. It's confusing the hell out of people where they'll start and be like, oh, I'm on a keto plan. I'm psyched about the keto plan. I'm all in keto plan. And then by day 5, they're like, ooh, I listened to this other show and it says that I need to be doing intermittent fasting. I'm all in on that. And they're just ping ponging everywhere around. So before we get into these top fat loss tips, what do you recommend as far as absorbing this material and how to implement it so that we're not just adding more mental clutter and confusion to the whole recipe we're trying to concoct for our own fitness program?
That's a really great point before we jump into this, because I know that we're going to fire hose people with a lot of information and they think they're going to have to do all of it in order to achieve the goal. Don't try to do all of this at once. Life is not about spinning on a dime and turning 180 degrees. That's not how we approach life. That's not how things work. You're think of yourself as this huge tanker moving across the ocean, and you're heading in one specific direction, and you've got a whole bunch of weight behind you pushing in that one direction because that is your life. Everything that you've learned up until now is going in that direction. And if you want to change course, whether it be 10 degrees, 5 degrees, whatever it is, it's one click at a time, right? So, and if you think that you're going to be able to slam on the brakes and turn on the, on that dime, it's impossible. So out of all the things that we list today, pick one or maybe two that you're going to try to implement over the next couple of weeks or couple months. If you listen to that Dan John episode, right, you were mentioning that earlier. Dan John talks about in terms of building these pirate habits. It's really smart, like these, shark habits, and then he has the pirate maps.
Shark habits, yep.
Yeah, so these shark habits, and basically some of the things he teaches to his clients is put your shoes on first thing in the morning, and then in terms of like losing weight or creating a habit for doing physical activity, put your sneakers on, and then walk around your house in your sneakers. The next month, put your sneakers on, walk out to the mailbox. The next month, at the same time every day, put your sneakers on, walk to the end of the street. Right, so every month, but you're carving out that time, you're building that habit. So for everything that we list today, pick and we can even, you and I, and trust Adam and I, we'll pick out of those 10 or 15 things that we discuss, the most important, maybe the top 3. And then out of those top 3, pick 1 or 2 and just focus on those to start. And those will be the most impactful in terms of burning body fat. Don't, look, there's lots of other things you could do. Look, you can do the ketogenic. You can jump right into a paleo diet. You can do a cayenne pepper thing. You can do the Whole30. You can eat, just I don't know, just like go vegan, whatever it is. You could do all of those things. But again, that's trying to turn your life on a dime. And that's just not realistic because the momentum is still moving in the direction that you were always heading. So you are eventually going to topple, right? You ever try to turn really fast when you're sprinting? And you skid out and you topple over. Well, that's what it's like to try to really change your entire health and wellness way too quickly. And that's what people just think that they're supposed to be able to do. And it's just not reality. It's just not true.
100% agree, brother. All right. So now that we've set the table, we know,
let's do this.
People know that we're going to bring some info here, but we've got some parameters to work with. So take good notes, everybody. And again, we're going to try to focus on just a few. We're going to try to maybe even rank these and think, all right, here's what will make the biggest impact on me. Choose that one thing, implement it in the next week or so, and then we make progress from there. So, Rob, let's dive into your list. What do we got, brother?
All right. So let's start with nutrition, right? In terms of nutrition and having the biggest effect on our nutrition. I'm going to go with the biggest one first. And that is sugar. Sugar, and sugar is probably and has probably the biggest impact on our fat gains. Most of us overeat when it comes to sugar. We're going way beyond how much we should be consuming every day, but we don't even realize we're doing it. So things like having a smoothie in the morning, people think that that's a healthy thing, but their smoothie is made up of 90% fruit. Now, even though fruit, yes, is quote unquote a healthier food, when you're pureeing it and drinking it and consuming it, it's as if you're eating a basket of fruit, and you're getting it in liquid form, which doesn't register with your brain that you've been eating. So you get this blast of sugar, you get these blast of calories, and then within an hour or two, you're starving again. And the next thing you know, you've been doing this for months and months and months, or maybe years and years and years, and you're still gaining weight when the rest of your diet is pretty solid. So sugar is a big one. Sugary drinks like Coca-Cola, even artificial sweeteners, trick your brain into thinking that you're getting sugar. So it's triggering the responses for your body to start that process as if sugar is coming into the body. Sports drinks like Gatorades also do the same exact thing. They're all full of high fructose corn syrup. Also, the foods that we're eating, whether it be our coffee and we're putting sugar in there, any added sugar, we have to pay attention to those things. Most people don't realize how much sugar they're putting in your body. And I want to give the reason I hesitated right there, because there's an amazing example, 2 examples of previous clients of mine that I was working with. One was a one-on-one client, and one that's in one of my groups right now. A one-on-one client goes, first day, swear to God, he says to me, he goes, Rob, look, I'm going to change everything. I'm going to do everything you say, but there's one thing that I'm not changing, and that's my coffee. And I'm like, okay. He goes, my coffee is like Christmas in a cup every morning. I don't want to not have that. And I said, okay, fine. I'm not going to touch your coffee. And we started implementing different habits and things for him to start working on. And then I started teaching him about sugar, exactly kind of what I'm talking about with you guys, and how that spikes your insulin, how it raises your, it basically, what happens in our body is the excess sugar gets broken down and then turned into fat, and then we store it, right? So he says, and I said, a very classic example would be like a Coffee Mate or a, International Delight, right? Those are full of high fructose corn syrup, and they have, and most people are putting like 2 or 3 tablespoons in their cup every morning. Well, he goes, well, I put that in my coffee every single morning. And I said, how many grams of sugar are in each serving? He said, he looks and he goes, 7. And I said, how many tablespoons are you putting in? He goes, well, I don't know the tablespoons, but I basically do is fill up the bottom of the cup with it, and then I fill up the rest of it with my coffee. And he was having like a 30 ounce. He had like one of those 7-Eleven, like big gulp cups, or whatever those are called, God. And he was filling up the bottom. It was one of those cups that are so big that it has a separate size at the bottom for your cup holder, because the cup is so tremendous that it has to have like a 2-stage size, right?
Converter for the car, yeah.
Right, exactly. So the bottom of it, where it was like the size of the cup holder, he would fill that with the Coffee Mate. He was buying them at Costco in the double gallon sizes, and he was going through one of those basically a week, one of those gallons each week. And so anyway, he did the math on it, and he figured out that he was consuming, to start his day, 72 grams of sugar every morning before he even touched breakfast. So we broke it down, and it's like 4, basically almost 3 or 4 Snickers bars that he was starting his day with every day. And I had another girl in my community in this online challenge that we're doing right now. I'm not even kidding, doing the same exact thing. And then you wonder, why am I not losing weight? Because the rest of my diet is fine. But again, you're starting your day off with 3 or 4 Snickers bars. That's kind of, it's mind blowing. So anybody out there who's drinking Coffee Mate, International Delight, any of these non-dairy creamers, because you want to stay away from the fat, quote unquote, the bad fat, right? You're probably overdoing it on the sugar. So if you're struggling with your weight, that would be the first thing to take a look at. That's going to have one of the biggest impacts. So that's not my number 1, probably one of the most important.
Yeah, I've got an example of a client that I worked with when I first started personal training, very similar to you. I just focus on habits, and she ran a pizza parlor, and we were cleaning up her diet, and things were going okay. But I was like, we started talking about what she drinks every day, and she was drinking 4 liters of Diet Mountain Dew every day, every single day, 4 liters.
4 liters?
Yes, 4 liters, because just throughout the day, she didn't drink any water. She just drank
That's
Diet
impressive.
Mountain Dew. Yeah, I know, it's a lot. And she's like 4'10" also. So,
Wow.
yeah. So I started talking to her about that, and she goes, well, it's 0 calories. So, no big deal. Right. And I go, no, the high fructose corn syrup, it's tricking your body, just like everything you said there, Rob. And we got her to drop the 4 liters. I got her to actually cut it in half. She didn't believe me that it would work. So I said, just drink 2 liters. She lost 20 pounds in the next 3 weeks because she dropped from 4 liters to, she's still drinking 2 liters of Diet Mountain Dew a day. Then we got her to cut it all the way out once she believed me that it was actually working, and we got super healthy. But it's amazing how that stuff impacts your body.
I heard that in the weed smoking community, the Mountain Dew is like, that's like the drink of the weed smokers. I heard this recently. I don't know if there's any weed smokers out there. I'm in Los Angeles, so it's legal out here, but I don't run in that crowd. So I'm curious if any of your audience knows this. Please let me know if it is true that Mountain Dew is the weed smoking beverage.
Put a survey out.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Cool. So we're cutting out the sugar. What's our next tip that you're bringing today, Rob?
All right. So number 2 on the list, and again, sticking with nutrition, is just an extension of the sugar, which is processed food. Now, we don't, let's define processed food, first of all. Processed food is any food that's not a whole food, right? That's one. And in terms of what you'd be looking for as a processed food, it would be any cakes and cookies and stuff like that. Again, those are sugars. But then things that most people wouldn't think of it as a processed food, like because they're staples in their diet, maybe pasta, bread, crackers. Those are processed foods. And the reason why they're on the list and they're so close to sugar is because processed food is made, or those processed carbohydrates, right? Like pastas and crackers and even cereal and such. They are broken down in the body eventually into glucose. Now, when our body consumes processed foods, right? Because where would we normally get our carbohydrates? Where would we normally get these glucose, energies from outside of processed foods? We'd get them from starchy vegetables like potatoes and squash and such, right? We'd even get them from our regular vegetables, our green vegetables as well, and our non-starchy vegetables. However, these cereals and all these other processed foods, basically, they break down into the same exact thing, right? Our body can only really use it and utilize it as glucose. But when you say processed, what it does is it eliminates a whole bunch of the body's mechanisms in order to break it down. And so what happens is you consume this food, it's almost like going down the slip and slide, where it's rushed to the end result, which is you absorbing it into and breaking it down into glucose very, very quickly, right? Your intestines, your stomach, your mouth doesn't have to do as much work in order to create that process. And so what we do is we get these insulin spikes. And again, it becomes the same exact process that we have with just consuming regular sugar. So one of the fastest ways to start losing weight is to cut out the processed food and cut out the sugar. Now, when I say cut out, that's really, for a lot of people, again, that's like a turning on a dime thing. But just like you, the way that you approached your client is, all right, well, let's try cutting that in half. Let's try, taking that down a bit. Let's try every other drink, or instead of having a sandwich, like a hero for lunch, let's try having like a sandwich with a little less bread, or cutting that down, or maybe doing a half sandwich, or instead of a hamburger with 2 buns, you take off half the bun, kind of things like that. So you start making slight changes, but those changes, if processed food and sugar are a big part of your diet, those changes are going to be, as you mentioned, with cutting half the Mountain Dews in half, are going to be huge in terms of weight loss. You might see a 5 or 10 pound drop in the first week, just because your body's relying on that as a source of energy, and now it has to figure out other ways to get the energy, which it might it starts eating at the fat stores. And also keep this in mind: carbohydrates end up keeping about 4 grams of water per gram of carbohydrates. So for every carbohydrate you consume, every gram of carbohydrate you consume, you hold 4 grams of water. So that's why when people go on the ketogenic diet, which is a high-fat diet, low-carb diet, they drop a lot of weight very quickly. It's because they're just not holding that water weight. So that's another reason why the weight drops off very quickly. So it might be slightly kind of like magic in the beginning, right? Where it's not necessarily just body fat that's dropping off, but there is that benefit of cutting out the processed food where your body's no longer going to store that excess sugar as fat. So that's my first 2. So sugar and processed food. Those are my first, probably the most impactful when it comes to burning fat and losing and dropping fat.
The interesting thing on that second point with processed foods, I recently spoke you'll be impressed with this, Rob. It was a big gig. I spoke at my son's first grade class about being healthy. So I was super nervous to be in front of this group of 15, 6 and 7 year olds.
Yeah.
But we talked about being healthy. And one of the things we talked about was eating more foods that don't come in a box versus foods that come in a box. I was like, that's how I kind of explain processed foods. I'm like, if you can eat more, and we start talking about what doesn't come in a box. Okay, eat more of those. What does come in a box? Let's eat a few less of those. That's how we're going to be healthy. And they totally got it. So I think the adults need to step it up. If the first graders get it, then I think we can all figure this out. So I just wanted to add that in there.
No, that's a good point. And just to add to that, in addition, because a lot of adults are going, well, shit, Rob, now you're telling me I can't have any sugar. So I got to cut out my coffee in the morning. I can't have pasta. I can't have bread. I can't eat sandwiches. I can't eat burgers. I can't eat the normal things that I that eat on a regular basis. Now what? Now I'm stuck. Right. So maybe it's a bad angle to come in for. It's not necessarily the most tactful way to tell people how to lose weight. Right. Because if I was working with a client, we're coming up with like the top 10 strategies for how to burn body fat, right? How to lose fat. And so we're coming in from a way that's not necessarily coaching, right? We're not coaching you how to lose this weight. We're giving you strategies. Now, as coaches, you and I, we would coach people in a different way. We wouldn't say, stop doing this, stop doing that. What I do is I teach my clients about the foods that do make you fat, or the foods that do keep you fat, or the foods that, will prevent you from losing body fat. But what we do is we say things like, okay, you know what? What we're gonna do this week is we're gonna focus on including one extra vegetable in throughout every day, right? 1 or 2 vegetables every day is going to be added to what's already in existence. So what we do is we add rather than subtract, and we also tell people what they can have. We lead with what's delicious, right? What's going to be nurturing, nutritious foods. Rather than leading with stop eating this, stop eating that, quit doing this, quit doing that, right? That's not as helpful because it leaves people feeling like they're left without rather than adding to and making people feel like, oh, there's a lot here that I can do. And that makes it takes a lot of the pressure off because then you're left feeling if everything gets taken away from you, you're left feeling like I have no other choices. I don't know what else to do. And then you go into that panic mode and then you feel overwhelmed and then you just stop doing it. And I think as a coach, it's probably one of the reasons why you're successful and I'm successful with my clients is that we help guide people towards something rather than pulling them away from something.
Right.
That makes sense?
Build some wins, build some momentum. Yep. 100%.
That's right.
Cool. So what do we have next? Let's keep building that momentum.
All right. So another big one for a lot of people, I'm just going to stick with one more for the nutrition stuff, and then I'm going to go into other well, actually, I kind of mentioned it, but I'm going to lump these two together, which is loading up on your veggies, right? And portion sizes. I'm going to put those two together, and those are two separate things on my list. But if you're talking about most dinner plates, most of us have more than half of our plate with starchy vegetables, right? And what I mean by that, again, potatoes, squash type foods. But what we need to start focusing on is leafy green, non-starchy vegetables like asparagus, broccoli, things like that. Think, even cauliflower, even though it's not green, but it's still a non-starchy vegetable. If we filled our bodies with those, if we filled half of our plate, I should say, with those, we're going to be already way ahead of the game. And then the quarter of the plate, the other half, right, is split up into quarters. 1 quarter is a starchy vegetable. Again, I've already talked about, and then a meat. Now, we can talk about sourcing our meats from specific places and such, but I don't think it's as important if we're just talking strictly about losing body fat. If you eat a quarter of your plate is meat, and that usually ends up being anywhere from 6 to 8 ounces for bigger guys. If you're maybe over like 2 or 250, maybe 10 ounces of meat. I can eat a 24 ounce steak without a problem, but I know that that's not necessarily, I'm overeating in that sense. So when we're talking about portion sizes, try to keep it to those portions. Now, if you have a lot of weight to lose, instead of doing the starchy vegetable, fill up 3/4 of your plate with leafy green, non-starchy vegetables, and then the last quarter with your meats. And that'll be one of the fastest ways you can start dropping body fat, and really strengthening your daily meal plan and portions. and keep it like that for a while. Now it does, like when I say, now you can overeat on vegetables all day long. It's never gonna put any extra weight on you. You're probably not gonna have any digestive problems and such. But I would say that is a really great strategy in terms of portions and vegetables, making that a really important part of your day-to-day consumption.
Yeah, and that's a tip that I toss out there. I see people freak out so often if we kind of lay out a nutrition plan and they're like, well, I didn't, I left my protein shake and some almonds. I left that at home or I forgot or something got messed up. So I had to go out and eat. And they freak out because they had a salad with chicken on it. I'm like, no, that's good. You did good. You made a great choice.
Yeah.
It's really hard to get fat by eating vegetables and lean protein sources. It's going to be really, really hard. So keep doing that. So I totally agree with what you just said there.
Yeah. And there's also another aspect to this that I learned a long time ago from a holistic nutrition counselor that I was working with personally. And she said something to me that stuck with me. And I'll say this for your audience. If there was a choice between eating bad food and not eating at all, and we're talking like hours where you're not going to have another option, you're better off eating something, right? Maybe not completely overindulging in getting the extra large French fries or whatever it is that if you're at like a fast food place, make the best choice that's there. But if you don't have a lot of great options but the next time you get to eat is maybe 4 or 5 hours because you're at a conference or something like that, but they only have like 3 different things. You pick from those 3 different things, the best one on the menu. Maybe it's not the best thing for you, but you have to eat. Like you cannot just say, well, I'm on a diet. I can't eat any of those things. I got to be rigid because Rob said to be rigid or Adam said to be rigid. You have to eat. Your body needs fuel. You're going to be doing yourself a disservice because what's going to happen is, first of all, your energy level is going to drop they're going to just plummet. You're going to suck at whatever you're doing, physically, you're going to feel terrible. And then later on, your chances of overeating later on are much greater than they would be if you had just eaten something less optimal than being so unbelievably rigid that you just starve yourself or just drink water or which might even be worse is over caffeinating in order to get through. So I would always recommend, I would always say eat something rather than nothing, but always make it the best choice that you possibly can in the moment. And then once you do that, don't judge yourself. Don't shame yourself. Don't talk down to yourself. Just say, I did the best that I could in the moment. Forgive yourself for that, for anything that you feel bad about, and then just keep on moving because life's all about choices and making the best one we can with the amount of choices that are in front of us.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I just wanted to interject real quick and make sure that you guys are paying attention to what Rob just said, because I've said it before, when you can't be at your best, you can still do your best. And that is exactly what we're hitting home on right here.
Exactly. Okay. So let's keep moving. So we covered sugar, processed food. We covered portions. We covered veggies. Let's move into a little bit of the things that we can do in terms of physically. What gives us the most bang for our buck when it comes to losing weight? And for most people, and even new clients that come in to see me, one of the first things they'll say is, I know, I got to lose weight. So I know I got to start doing cardio like 5 or 6 days a week, on top of whatever workouts we're going to be doing here. And I'm like, what are you talking about? People buy into this, that they think they have to be on a treadmill for an hour every day if they want to start losing body fat. Now, if you're 350 pounds and you haven't worked out in your lifetime or, any time, going for a 20-minute walk every day might be sufficient. It could be everything that you need in order to start losing weight, right? Because let's be honest, the nutrition part of it is going to be the most impactful. If you started doing all the things that we talked about and changed the nutrition, that's really all you need. And taking a walk every day, you're probably going to, in the first year, drop 100 pounds. I mean, it's just, if you're changing your diet and your body and you're moving more than you were, 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day, your body's going to start changing and adapting to that. So that would be that could be, and all you need to do, right? But when we're talking about in terms of getting the most bang for your buck when exercising, and now I'm talking about people who are probably 50, 60 pounds overweight. And maybe you can even talk with me about that, because I know maybe I know you've done boot camps before in the past, Adam. And I know that you've helped a lot of people lose a lot of weight. And in terms of the workouts that people do, I've found much better progress or results from people doing more high intensity, obviously being safe with what you're working with, but more high intensity, like HIIT training, HIIT workouts, rather than long duration cardio things. So rather than stepping on a treadmill and walking or jogging for, 50 minutes or an hour at like a 4, if you just did some, maybe like 5 different exercises, and you did, I don't know how advanced your audience is, but things like an AMRAP or a Tabata challenge, or maybe like on the minutes, or, any kinds of, actually I can give you, if you want this, I actually have a home workout body weight guide for your audience, if you guys want that. I'll just plug it right now. They can download it. It's easy. It's openskyfitness.com/free workouts. And basically what it does is it gives you these home workouts that you can do that last nowhere longer than 20 minutes. And you can incorporate these. And now these kinds of workouts, these HIIT workouts, which stands for high intensity interval training, they pack so much more of a punch than just this long, slow, sustained cardio. Because what happens is, and the reason being is because we have this thing in our bodies, or this way of our bodies processing things called adaptation. And unless we are doing something that our body notices and recognizes that we have to adapt to, it won't adapt. Our bodies are unbelievably efficient. They want to be efficient, meaning they want to be lazy in a sense, to where everything is easy for them on a day-to-day. So if you're this is one of the reasons why the most overweight people are just on treadmills, and you see them at the gym every time you walk in. It's the same person on there for the last year, and maybe they lost a couple pounds, but they're really no different. If you want to adapt, if you want your body to change, you need to make it has to try to adapt to something. So doing these high intensity trainings for, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, your body is like, oh my God, I'm carrying all this extra weight around. I got to get rid of this stuff. What do we do? Because the next time Rob's going to do this again tomorrow, and I don't want to be in the same place. So now it's going to start to adapt. And it goes back to, I was talking to Mark Sisson about this, talking about how back in the day when we would get chased by animals, we would be sprinting or hauling to kind of save our own lives. And if this happened on a regular basis, we would basically have to adapt to that. So this way, the next time we get chased, we can run faster. We can run longer if we needed to. And so that's basically what we're trying to train our body to think, that we have to work a little bit harder every single time. So this way, the body has to get more efficient. It has to drop that excess pounds. It has to build a little more muscle mass. That's why you'll see, we're going to talk about, one of the other things I'm going to talk about is sprinting, because it kind of falls into the same category. But if you notice the difference between sprinters and long distance runners, which one would you rather look like, in terms of body type? The sprinters they're lean, they have a little more muscle mass, or actually some of them quite a bit more muscle mass, and they are explosive, people. The long distance runners, they tend to have zero muscle mass, and sometimes a little bit, depending if we're talking about like real competitors. I'm talking about like the average runner, right? They tend to hold a little extra body fat because their body wants to keep that fat on there as a source of energy, because it knows you're going to run those long distances, and it needs that extra stuff because it's like, this guy's crazy. He's running for 20 miles. Let's keep some fat on us because we don't know how long he's going to do this for. So it's if you think about it logically, the way the body does this, it adapts to these high intensity trainings a lot better than it does these long cardio trainings. So anyway, that in a nutshell, that this one big thing that you can add to your training programs is doing more HIIT workouts. Did you notice the same thing for a lot of your clients? You were doing boot camps?
100%. And adding in the different types of intervals is so important too, because you will start to adapt. So we do mix in the Tabatas, we do the every minute on the minute, the AMRAPs, the high intensity interval training, all that. We like to shake it up as much as possible. But I run into the same thing as what you were talking. People were like, oh, I need to do, 10 hours a week of working out. I'm like, no, let's start with like 2 or 3 and just make it really count and break it up and, and hit it hard and focus on quality and intensity versus duration. So I'm right in line with what your thoughts are there, Rob.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's where, what is the saying? Like, being more, just be more, it's more quality than quantity when you're doing workouts, right? It doesn't matter what you do. I think we can all agree that, in order to see results, it's all about the quality, not the quantity. So you can overdo it all day long, or spend hours and hours and hours at the gym. But if you're just meandering around, kind of taking it easy, your body's not gonna adjust to that. So yeah, I think that, and when we're talking about nutrition too, right? If we're talking about adaptation, the same thing for nutrition. Your body is adapting to the new foods that you're giving it. And how does it adapt? It loses body fat. It starts to burn more fat as a source of energy. It starts to rely on the nutrients that you're giving it as the energy source, rather than just taking them in and converting them to fat and storing them. So it makes a big difference. If you look at everything as how our body's how's my body going to adapt to that? That gives you a little more indicator of like how you can strategically start planning this stuff out for yourself. So yeah, that's talking about hit workouts. Are we ready to move on to the other one? Do you want to add anything else onto that?
I think, yeah, let's keep it rolling, buddy. This is good. Good stuff. I'm taking a lot of notes.
Okay, good. So obviously I mentioned sprinting, right? Look at that as like, if you are going to do cardio and you do love to run, a workout that I got from Mark Sisson again is, do you know who Mark Sisson is, right? From
yes.
Primal Blueprint, right? I don't know if you've ever had him on your show, but you should. And he's a great guest. He did something, said something that was this one workout, 10 minutes long. It's a crusher. Do it outside in the park or on your street or whatever. But you do like a warm up jog, and then you sprint for 10 seconds. And then you either walk or run for the remainder of the minute, the 50 seconds. So every minute on the minute, you sprint for 10 seconds, and then you walk or run the 50 seconds until that next minute starts for 10 minutes. It is unbelievably brutal. Now, the thing is that you can't just do like a kind of run jog for that 10 seconds. It has to be an all out hauling ass, way, like as if somebody is chasing you with a knife kind of thing, right? You're carrying, like you've just robbed somebody, and if they catch you, you're going to jail for 20 years. So you got to be running, hauling ass, like full on for that 10 seconds. Like just your tiptoes are just tapping the ground. You're flying. And then you can decelerate and just take it to a walk or a jog for the remainder and catch your breath, and then do it again every minute on the minute for 10 minutes. It is crushing. That'll give you a better cardio workout than any 45 minutes to an hour on the treadmill at a steady state. So that's my sprinting.
That sounds awesome. I want to make a note that I told you I was taking lots of notes, and one of the notes I just took is need to get Mark Sisson on show. Make Rob make the contact. So I'm gonna hit you up for that connection.
Yeah, I've had Mark on my show a couple of times. I go to his house every year for they have this Primal Kitchen. What is it, like an event where Primal Kitchen is Mark Sisson's Primal Blueprint. It's kind of like the sister company where they make great mayonnaise. They make all of these products with like avocado oil and really good fats. And these energy bars that they have on there as well. And they send them to me. I get a box every year or every 6 months, and they send them to me. And they're so good. You know that they're made with top quality ingredients. If you live in Los Angeles, I haven't been there yet, but last month, Primal Kitchen restaurant just opened up in Culver City. Oh, wow. And his son and his daughter run that. So it's a really cool family, and they incorporate everything. It's like their whole entire lifestyles are all about really optimizing their own personal health and just growth and such. And it's so, yeah, I'll definitely make the introduction for you. Just, of course, just email me and remind me, and I'll set that up. And I can even set you up with just like one of their assistants rather than Mark himself, because that's the person who would be booking anyway. But okay. So you want to move on to the next one?
Yep. Yeah. Let's do the next one.
So we talked about the hits, right? Now let's talk about adaptation in a different way, which is lifting heavy, right? We go into the gym, we pick up the light weights, we do 15 reps of this, 15 reps of that. We don't increase the weight. We do the same exact weight every 3 sets or for 4 sets. And then we walk out of there. Maybe we're a little bit sore for the first week or so. But then after that, you're not really getting any stronger. So it's really important And if you don't know how to lift heavy, obviously hire someone to help you, like a personal trainer or a coach of some sort. But lifting heavy is going to be one of the best ways for you to start triggering adaptation. Now, people are going to go, and especially women are going to start to say, well, I don't want to get big. I don't want to get muscular. Trust me, if it was that easy to get big and muscular, every guy would be big and muscular. It's not that easy. And the same for any woman that wants to be jacked. It's not that easy. And girls, you don't have testosterone like the rest of us, like the guys, right? You don't have testosterone. So you're not going to have that muscle growth like a man would have. And if you're afraid of getting too big, also keep in mind, you're not eating the way that you would if you were trying to put on that kind of muscle mass. For the average person, 1,600 calories or 2,000 calories is generally normal. Maybe up to 2,500 is like a normal calorie intake. Not that I ever want anybody to count calories, but I'm just talking in general. For somebody who's training to put on muscle mass is eating like 3,000, 4,000 calories, sometimes 5,000 calories in order to really fuel those muscles that have been broken down and stressed and have to rebuild. You need the nutrients. You need the proteins, the carbohydrates. You need the fats in order to rebuild all of those muscles and have that muscle growth. But if you're not doing that and you're just lifting heavy and you're eating within your means and you're eating just to fuel yourself, you will get stronger. You will build some muscle mass, but not to an extent like you would start to look like a bodybuilder. It's really difficult to do that. I've done it. I've gone through the process. It's really hard, and you have to be really, really strict on how you're eating and how much, and be consistent with how many calories you're taking in every day. But if you want to see the results of someone who is, muscular but toned and kind of ripped, you have to have muscle underneath. And muscle, as a general rule, burns more calories on a regular basis than fat. We all know this. We know that it takes more energy in order to sustain muscle mass than it does to just be overweight and fat and have those fat molecules inside of us. So the more muscle mass you have, the more food you can eat, the more you burn off that fuel, that food. And it's like this great kind of cycle that you can stay within. That's why people that are fit end up, being able to eat, you go out to dinner with them and they're eating cake and you're like, why are you eating cake? And it's like, well, they have a lot of muscle mass on them. It's not going to necessarily show through. Where if somebody's overweight and has a lot of fat on them, it's going to show very quickly, and their body's going to store it very quickly. And instead of utilizing it as a source of energy to feed the muscles, right? So having that muscle mass on you is going to be a game changer. Now, the reason why, again, falls into the same category as the HIIT training or the HIIT workouts is adaptation. Your body doesn't change unless it needs to. If you're not getting underneath a very heavy bar, the body doesn't think it has to change. So if you're just pushing the same weight, just like you'd be walking on the treadmill, if you're pushing the same weight every week, every day that you're at the gym, to expect to get stronger, to expect the body to adapt to that is kind of fooling yourself. So you want to make sure that you're always challenging yourself, and that, going back to changing things up and always giving different workouts. The same thing, every professional bodybuilder or athlete in that sense who does utilize heavy lifting does something called phases. They work out in phases. They do 6 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks of a specific program. Their body adapts to that program, and then they change the program because they need to trigger more adaptation. If they stayed on that same program and did that same workout for a year or two, they'd plateau after 2 months and they would never see any more results. And they'd be like, well, why isn't this working anymore? Because the body knows what it's doing. Even though you're tossing up a whole bunch of weight, you're doing it the same way, same rep counts, same movement patterns every single workout. There's no reason. The body's like, even though it's a lot of weight, the body's used to it. So that's why lifting heavy weights and changing it up consistently is really, really helpful. And if you do a combination of heavy lifting and HIIT workouts, oh man, that's like a whole nother world in terms of really dropping body fat.
Home run.
That's the home run.
Home run. Yep. That for the clients, especially. One of the really interesting things I've noticed is in my hometown, I've helped 15 people lose over 100 pounds. So these are people that are starting in that over 300 or maybe even 400 pound range. And these people, they love the heavy weights. They love the strength training. Yeah. Because it kind of gives them an early win. They're actually kind of good at it because many of these folks have been heavy for an extended amount of time. And aside, if you want to call it a benefit, is that they have really freaking strong legs from just being heavy and walking up and down stairs and moving that weight around, and they start to lose some of it. And they have this natural, like, people love to deadlift. I've got one of my 100-pound clubbers that is a female. She's lost 120 pounds. Shout out to Mandy, but she can deadlift over 300 pounds. And I put her on Instagram all the time, lifting these heavy deadlifts, and people freak out. And I'm like, this is a huge win for this girl. But I think that the mental component of getting some weight on a bar and moving it, it's empowering for these people that are on this journey where they may struggle a lot with the high intensity interval training, but they can kind of get that win going with the weights. And like you said, being able to combine these together, it's just magic. And that's where people really get that quality out of their time in the gym and don't need as much quantity, just like you said, Rob.
Yeah. And I think just to add on to that, Mandy or Maddie, what was her name? Mandy, I would imagine, and if she's listening to this, I would even ask, like, how addicted do you become to the numbers, right? In terms of getting stronger, it's something to look forward to. When we're just showing up at the gym, we're getting on the treadmill and we're walking, or if we're just doing the same workouts every single time and no weights change, nothing changes. You don't even know if you're getting stronger. How easy it's going to be so hard to maintain that. It's going to be so boring. But if every time she steps up to that deadlift bar and she kind of gets out and gets ready and she's like, okay, last time I did 105, today I'm going for 107 and or 110 or whatever it is. It's like, and then she nails it and then she feels proud of herself and then she's like, great, I'm getting stronger. And there's like some kind of metric to find out whether or not you're actually progressing, right? Which leads me into the next thing, which is actually tracking your results, right? If you're not tracking your results, whether it be, and some people, I don't necessarily recommend it all the time, but, weighing in is a big one. Doing circumference measurements is a big one. Taking pictures is a big one. Tracking your workouts, your lifts. Even if you're doing an AMRAP, right, as many rounds as possible in 15 minutes. Well, next, if you do it and you write down, I did exactly 3 rounds plus 14 reps into the second exercise. That's my score for this week. I'm going to do that same exact AMRAP next week. And then I just got 4 rounds plus or 5 rounds plus, and I'm getting stronger, I'm getting faster, I'm becoming more efficient. You're tracking it, I had a client one time who was getting frustrated with he thought he wasn't getting stronger cardio wise. I was like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. Every Friday, we're gonna do the same workout for the next month. Just the last 10 minutes of our workout before we stretch. And I'm guaranteeing you're gonna start noticing a difference. Watch. So we did the same exact workout. I can't remember if it was an AMRAP or whatever it was. It was just to make an example. And every single week he got stronger, faster, and more powerful. And by the end of the month, he was just like, I can't believe it. Now, if you do those same exact things, but you're not necessarily writing it down and tracking those results, you would never know. Every single workout would feel really hard, and you'd be like, oh man, I'm not getting any stronger. I'm not getting any better. It's not that you're not getting stronger and better. Every workout is just as hard as the last one. But if you don't know how far you've come, you have nothing to compare it to. So you just feel like you're not getting any better, right? So you have to be able to track those things. And it goes like it's across the board. It's the same thing if you were talking about your business. You would want to figure out your metrics, right? You want to figure out what your downloads are. You want to know, am I growing? Am I not growing? Am I getting better at this? We have to know if we're getting better. If we don't, then we're just kind of floundering. And that eventually spins out of control. And then we stop doing whatever it is we're doing because we lose interest. So if you're tracking your results, that's going to be one of the biggest metrics of a successful person in terms of seeing and achieving their goals. So that's another one. So that was kind of a segue into one of the big ones for me.
Yeah. And I want to add one thing too in there with this point, because it's kind of a double-edged sword, because people like you and I, it's our job to keep helping people push to that next level. And it's also our job, though, like you said, to remind people of how far they've come to. Right. Turn around and say, all right, here's where you started from. Here's where you're at now. Let's be proud of that for a minute. Let's celebrate this milestone that you just hit. Because like you said, it's so easy for people to just be blinded by that ideal. I'm not there yet. Yeah. And then, I want to be able to do 50 push-ups and I only did 40. Well, when you started, you could only do 20. Let's be proud of that first. And then we can keep driving. Because as soon as we hit that goal, it's like, okay, I hit that and I'll celebrate for 1 second. On to 60 push-ups. So it's a natural human tendency. And people, we all do this. We all beat ourselves up about that. I just got an email from a client right before we hopped on the show here. and she was talking about this exact thing. So I'm really, really glad that you mentioned that. So back into let's hit him with the home run here, Rob. What do you got to finish up? I want to make sure that we have some time to talk about connecting with you. So let's drop one more knowledge bomb on him, and then we'll talk about you.
So the last one I'm going to mention is going to be, if you are having a hard time, this is not necessarily fat loss in general, but it's going to help you build your motivation. If you haven't necessarily gotten on a program yet, and you haven't necessarily really built the momentum up where you feel like you are making progress, I would say one of the best things you can do for yourself is sign up for something, whether it be a competition, like a 5K or a 10K or a triathlon, or I don't know. It could be a bodybuilding contest. It could be whatever the hell you want it to be. Something that you want to challenge yourself with, and it's a goal that's now in the future. Or if you signed up for, you can sign up for a half marathon, right? And I used to be the coach of the ASPCA running team here in Los Angeles. One of the coaches. There's lots of coaches here, but the way that they did it was people wanted to lose weight. Most of the people that were doing that wanted to lose weight, they wanted to improve their health, but they also wanted to do something that inspired them, which was take care of animals. So the thing that they did was they just signed up for this half marathon, and then they got coaching to come along with it, through the ASPCA. So it might be a way for you to get in the back door of your own personal health by signing up for something like this, and then basically putting a timeline on when you have to compete or complete something, right? And I have a client who's doing a turkey trot coming up this Thanksgiving. She'd done them years and years ago. She had done 5Ks and 10Ks. And one of the things I said to her was, okay, let's sign up for one of these. We don't have to run this, right? But what we're doing is we're building a program around you getting there. One of the things you have to do within the 3 weeks before is you have to sign up for another race sometime within the next 2 months after that event to keep that momentum moving, right? And also, after you signed up, you have to go out and try to find friends to join you. And so she felt really uncomfortable doing that. She felt like she was begging people to do it. But she got over the hump, and she asked some of her friends. And I said, look, you have to have a mindset like this. You're not asking them to do it with you. You're inviting them to join you in something that you find to be exciting. And she did. And now she has like 5 or 6 friends doing it with her. And she's like super excited to do this thing. And all of her friends are thanking her for inviting, because now they have a reason to do something and be active, And so she's created this community around her that is highly, highly motivated to achieve this one thing, all within, a couple of mile drive of where she lives. And they train sometimes together. They're training, they're talking about what they're doing. So she built this little community to help her guarantee her own personal success. So there's if you can just give yourself something to look forward to that you can train for, it could be one of the best things you can do for yourself.
I love that. That was actually one of my favorite parts about your bio and the website, is that this is what you do. I mean,
That's right.
You've done. Can you talk about just a few of the things that you've used to motivate your own fitness progress in line with this?
So when early in the conversation, I was talking about how I was 30 pounds overweight. Well, the way that I got out of that was one of my clients said to me, and I didn't come up with this idea myself. I got kind of backdoored into it. My client who I was training here in Los Angeles said, "Hey, Rob, I'm thinking about doing a half marathon." I was like, "Oh, really?" He's like, "Yeah." And this was right around the time that I got married. And he said, "Would you be willing to train me for it?" And I was like, "Well, I've never trained anybody for a run like that. I've never done a run like that. But what if I sign up for the race with you? We train together as part of our training program and such, and I'll run it with you. And then I'll see if I can get other people to do it." So that's what I did. And I did exactly the thing that I'm telling my other clients to do. And I ended up getting, we had pictures. I think there was 4 or 5 of us that ran at that first half marathon. I thought I was going to die. It was my first ever race. I've never run that long. The furthest I'd ever run in my life was maybe 4 or 5 miles. I'd never run 13 miles plus. And I did it. And I was like, wow, this is actually a really cool idea. So then I just started signing me and my clients up for 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons. And then I started doing triathlons. And for 3 years, I was basically doing all these events. And I was lifting a little bit here and there. But I was focusing mostly on endurance events. And that was basically 3 years of my life getting back. Now, through that process, I was figuring out nutrition for myself. How do I optimize my nutrition? How do I, if I'm going to go for a swim or if I'm going to go for a run, or how do I feel when I'm doing those things? So there's a lot of learning involved in that, right? You eat a cheeseburger, then you go for a 5-mile run. You don't feel so good. Nope. And it's kind of, some people just forget that. They think that they can do things like that, but it has a big impact. Having drinks the night before and then meeting people for a run in the morning has an impact. And then I transitioned out of that. I remember feeling like, okay, I've done a lot of this. I don't want to dedicate a lot of my time to just doing cardio all the time. I want to focus on lifting. I felt like I was doing well with my nutrition. I didn't have as much muscle mass as I didn't feel as comfortable in myself. I just felt like I was kind of like getting really, this is when I was I was like 163. And that was probably the lightest I had been in a long time. I think I wrestled in high school at 165. So I was light at that time. And I decided I'm going to change gears here. I need something that's going to motivate me to lift, and get bigger. So I signed up for a men's physique competition. Never done anything like that before. Nice. I was like, going to give myself 6 months to get ready for this. I figure I'm going to train for 3 months of lifting heavy and eating as many calories as I can get in and trying to put on as much muscle mass. And then for the last 3 months or 4 months, I'm going to diet down and get, as ripped as I can for this and then compete. I got to step on stage. So there was, I didn't want to look like a fool. I didn't want to get on stage. And I told everybody I was going to do it. So I had to do it. And I gave myself that accountability. And I ended up getting on stage for the first time. This was when I was 36 years old. I had gone from 163 pounds up to 194 pounds, back down to 169 pounds within the 6-7 months. Now, that wasn't healthy, right? But I wanted to see what I can do physically. And I learned a hell of a lot about my body along the way. But I ended up getting down to 5% body fat with, I don't know how much muscle mass I had put on in that process, probably about 20 pounds of muscle mass. And ended up taking 5th in that competition. And that's when I realized, wow, I can really do anything with my body as long as I give myself a goal and create the accountability around it. And I have an ego enough. That's the other thing. A lot of times when I ask my clients, like when I ask a prospective client how competitive are you? 1 to 10, like 10 being, 1 being like, I don't give a crap about anything. And 10 being like, I will cut you if it means winning. So like, I want to know where they range. You have to have a little bit of competitiveness, whether it be just you. If you have to be slightly competitive with yourself and also slightly competitive with other people. So that's something I figured out over time about myself and how I utilized using these competitions, these races, whatever it is, in order to really start rekindle or reignite the motivation to get on, to be consistent with my workouts again. So that's kind of my own personal story about it. And I find that it works with everybody. As long as you're willing to do it, as long as you're physically capable of running a race or, doing maybe a bike race or something like that. If you're physically capable, then there's nothing stopping you from doing it. If you find that yourself to just be really nervous about it, well, that's a whole different conversation about why you don't want to do it. But I challenge you that it would be, and I guarantee you that you would feel a whole lot of self-accomplishment from that. If you just sign up and you complete it, you're going to feel really good about yourself if you do.
I love it. I love your story with that. I love how you're leading by example. So I know, man, it's hard to pump the brakes on this one because we're rolling right along and I'm loving it, but I want to be respectful of your time. I want to make sure that we, now that my audience knows you and they've heard your story and some of your best tips, what is the best way to continue that relationship? How can they connect with you best?
Yeah, I think the best way they can connect is, one, if they want to listen to our show, they can subscribe to the Open Sky Fitness podcast. As you mentioned in the beginning, it's my wife and I. She's a holistic nutrition counselor, a gyrotonic instructor, which is kind of like a Pilates / yoga thing here in Los Angeles. she's been doing that for 15 years. She's been in the health field longer than me. I've been in for, 10 years now. But we have every week we post an episode where we either interview somebody one week, and then the next week we'll do a specific topic that we cover that's, that we find helps our audience. So if you wanted to check out the podcast, please do subscribe. That would be amazing. We do have a community of people that listen to our show. And if you like this conversation and you want to be a part of a community, because communities really do help people grow, and find the support systems and the accountability that they do need in order to be successful. We have a community on Facebook called the Open Sky Fitness Podcast Group. It's a fantastic group of people. We have, I think, over 700, and it's one of those places where you go and everybody's talking and having conversations and is really interactive and helping each other along the way, whether they ask questions or help people answer questions. It's just one of these really great groups. So that's probably the place that Devin and I hang out the most. And we're across all other social medias. If they want to go to our website, openskyfitness.com, they can do that, or you can do that. And, or at Open Sky Fitness is basically our Facebook page, our Instagram page, and our Twitter page. Those are but we hang out. If you're talking about getting to know us, having personal one-on-one conversations, go to the Open Sky Fitness Podcast Group on Facebook. That's where we are. And you can put a link to that in the show notes too. I think it's actually openskyfitness.com/community will get you there. If you just as a direct link to the podcast group.
Yeah. We'll dig that up. I'll get it all connected in the show notes and in the blog. So you guys will make sure that you are well connected, that you can, I want you to go to the website and see Rob's bodybuilding pictures. They're awesome. 5% is looking, he's lean and mean, and it's really, it'll give you something that you'll be inspired by that. So that's a little bit of homework for you guys. Now, Rob, before I let you go, I just want to take a second to say thanks. I want to acknowledge you. I love your energy. I'm a fan of you and what you're doing. I'm a fan of your show. And I just appreciate the fact, I've talked about this before, but in fitness, there can be a lot of ego and a lot of like, the camps, my stuff is the only way and it's the best way and you should only do that, or my stuff's better than their stuff. So I just appreciate it whenever somebody's willing to come on here and kind of just join forces. I feel like our message is very aligned, and it's kind of use the right tool for the right job. And if that is, doing HIIT workouts, then let's start there. If it's eating more vegetables, let's start there. So it's very client focused. I feel like that's the way that fitness needs to go. So I just appreciate that. And I'm thankful that you are representing that space in fitness. So I just want to say thanks for your time. I know I kept you longer than I told you we were going to book for, okay. But I loved it. And I love just, the conversational nature that you bring to your own show and you've brought to our show. And I think we may be due for a round 2 in the near future, my man.
Anytime. And you're coming on my show. I think I got you scheduled sometime in January, right? Yep. I'm looking forward to having you, and we can continue this conversation there too. And I totally agree. And I just want to reemphasize, we did give you a lot of information today, right? So if you're listening and like, oh my God, I got so much stuff to do, 1 or 2 things, right, off of the list. Just pick 1 or 2 things and start implementing those, and just feel like, oh, I got that under control, and then start implementing new things and adding them on. And one more thing I mentioned, and just in case you forgot to jot it down and you were like, I got to rewind there to find it. If you want those 5 home workouts, you can go to openskyfitness.com/free workouts, all one word, obviously. And just, and there's a link there for you to download it. So that'll help you kind of get the ball rolling. If you're at home and you're busy and you feel like you don't have that much time and you don't want to join the gym and you just don't know what to do, it's a really good jumping off point. And the workouts, they're difficult in terms of, you're going to start sweating, but they're not that complicated. Right. So I think you'll enjoy it, and you'll get some great results out of it, especially if you haven't really been doing much lately. So
I know that's you also mentioned that you're going to have something cooking in January with a challenge group, right? I wanted to make sure that we can mention that. I can, if you have you solidified the start date on that yet?
Yeah, so that's started. So right now, you and I are talking, just so people know, but I know that it's going to be a month later. So we're talking on November 2nd, right? On October 30th, which was just 4 days ago, we started an 8-week challenge. It's just outside of the normal podcast community. It's a smaller group of people that are doing this 8-week challenge. It includes 6 days a week of body weight workouts, very similar to all the stuff that we were talking about. Again, it's for busy people who feel like they don't have the time to necessarily go to the gym. And we give a meal plan with it as well. We give what is called a cookbook, right? And when I say meal plan, Devin and I are very hesitant in that we're not dogmatic about nutrition, but we do know that eating a whole food diet is very important. If you're gonna make any changes to your diet, it's all whole foods, and most everybody will have a positive a response to that kind of eating. So that's what we think of it more of like meal plan recommendations rather than eat this and only this, otherwise you're going to fail on this program. It's very it's up for interpretation. But so we have that, and then there's a great accountability every single day, every single week. There's different things to be focusing on and really making some positive impacts in the community. So we just started this one on October 30th, 2017. The new one is starting 3 months from then, which is January 22nd, 2018, and that's a Monday. And so if they want to check that out and they're interested, go to openskyfitness.com/challenge. You could sign up for the waiting list for January there. And then this way you get all the notifications on when we're going to be launching and how to sign up for the next one, because it's a really instead of the program, the program is great, right? The program's great, because we could talk about, it doesn't matter what, I want to curse right here. It doesn't matter what fucking program you decide on. It's going to work on you if you stay with it and you're consistent and it's something new, right? Your body's going to adapt to it. It's going to, like I said, it needs something to adapt to, right? So if you give it that challenge, it's going to adapt, right? The biggest benefit of this is the community that you're creating around your lifestyle. That is going to be have the biggest impact on you. If you don't have that support system at home or within the community that you're within, the friends that you have, this is where you'll get it. There's amazing people in there, and Devin and I are hanging out in there every day as well, just having conversations, trying to help people solve problems, right? And that is one of the reasons to do it. So again, it's openskyfitness.com/challenge, and that'll take you to the page, and it'll let you know that it starts on January 22nd, which again is a Monday. And we start letting people in a few days early to kind of get an idea of the meal plan. They can do their food shopping. They can ask questions prior to. But yeah, generally it's a fun thing to do. So if anybody's interested in it, please reach out. There's also a link on that same page for you to ask me questions as well if you're not quite sure. But that's it. But I appreciate you bringing that up, because I completely forgot to mention that.
Yeah,
and I asked you
important. It's important.
Yeah,
it's all about action. Like you said, we've given everybody a lot of information. So everybody listening in, I'm going to have detailed show notes, detailed info on the blog, depending on how you like to consume the extra information with all the shows. So we are going to get you connected. My challenge to you guys out there is to take one thing in the next 24 hours and say, all right, this is my action step. In the next 24 hours, I'm going to do this, and just start taking baby steps in the right direction, whether it's filling up your plate 3/4 of the way with green leafy vegetables, or maybe doing a 10-minute HIIT training workout 3 times a week. And whatever just resonates with you, you're inspired to do, then let's do that, and let's get committed in the next 24 hours. So once again, Rob, thank you so much for your time, man. It's just an honor to have you on the show. And everybody out there, we're going to take action. We're going to do this together. I appreciate all the energy you guys are bringing to the 1 Million Pound Mission. And as always, I'm going to encourage you to get out there. I want you to own it every meal, every workout, every day. I will see you on the next episode.
Now, I hope that you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And if you got anything out of this, some inspiration, some motivation, some hot tips, then I would love for you to hit the subscribe button. I would love for you to leave me a rating and review in iTunes. And I'd really, really love it if you would share the episode on your favorite social media platform. Those are the 3 ways you can help support the show and support our 1 Million Pound Mission. We're all in this together. We're hacking it out together, 1 pound at a time. I appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next episode.